job, and that was in 1973, July of 1973, and stayed here for 18 years. And the things I'll talk about are things that I was involved in or saw with my own eyes during that 18 years I was here. Richard knows what went on in the system and how the political events and things that I didn't have a clue what was going on. And my perspective was what actually went on at the Crater of Diamonds. And that's some of the things I'm going to share with you mostly. But I was just setting the stage. That's how I got here. I'm going to start with W.W. Johnson, the Amarillo Starlight. I'm sure you'd all like to hear a little bit about that. That diamond was found August 25th of 75. I'd been here a couple of years. I was just muddling my way through trying to run this park as a 23-year-old superintendent who probably couldn't spell superintendent, but I was one, and I had to do something. So I did the best I could. Probably my best attribute that I was stubborn. You know, I didn't quit. I just kept trying, and anyway, that seemed to get me through. But in August of 75, about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we were closing up. It was just me and Sue McCarty, Catherine McCarty. Many of you know her. We were closing up the Visitor Center, which was across the parking lot in the old Millar residence, the house that was there. Stan Graves, he knew that house. He was out here a few times because he had relatives near here. And it had been really a magnificent house in his time, but at that time, when I came down here, it was pretty well run down. It had pretty well used its life up. But anyway, Sue and I were closing the Visitor Center up, and I'd shut the back door, and I could look up toward the mine, and I saw a man walking down the hill. This is how this actually happened that day. If you didn't hear the story, this is the actual story. I saw a man walking down the hill, and he'd throw something up, and he'd catch it. Something up, and he'd catch it, and I didn't really pay attention to that because people were always doing that type of thing. So I locked the door. Catherine had locked another door. I was over locking something else up, and he came to the door and knocked. We never did turn anybody away that wanted to talk to us if it took an hour or 2 hours. So she went over to the door. She was closer to him, and she opened the door, and I could hear them talking, but I didn't know what was being said. And he held something out and looked, and I was doing something, but I looked up kind of, like that, and I saw her just turn white. And I knew there was something going on pretty strange there. And she called me boss. All the years that we worked together, she called me boss. I don't know if she ever called me Jim. Called me boss. She said, "Boss, you need to come over here and look at this." And I thought, oh my, what's going on? I walked over there, and Mr. Johnson was holding it in his hand, and it was the Amarillo Starlight. It was 16 carats and 37 points after we weighed it that day. The biggest diamond that's been found since it's been a state park, and the biggest diamond that I'd certainly ever seen before. And anyway, we brought it in, we weighed the diamond. I was trying to sort through this in my mind all the time we were doing this, thinking, how am I going to deal with this? Because I knew there was going to be a deluge of media here the next day, if not that night. I knew it was going to happen. We were going to be swamped. So we weighed the diamond. We talked a while. Mr. Johnson was here with his wife and children and some other family members. He had found the diamond on the surface back in this Beatty's Hill area, kind of behind me to my left. I said, "How'd you find it, sir?" And he said, "Well, I was standing under a shade tree, August 25th. It was hot." He said, "I kept seeing something shining a little bit over there, and I thought, I'm going to go look." And he said, "No, it's too hot. I'm not going to get out there in the sun." But he said, about the time I was ready to leave, I did walk over there, and he said, just the tiny tip of this thing was sticking up where I could see it. And he said, "I took my pocket knife, and I just put it under it and raised it up." And he said, then I knew it. Knew I had it. He said I didn't know what it was. So that's why he was just flipping it up coming down the hill. He had no idea what it was. So anyway, we weighed it, and I went outside. He was fixing to leave. And I said, "Mr. Johnson," I said, let me explain something to you. I said, "This diamond is probably worth a lot of money, really a lot of money." I said, "I'm not talking $1,000 or two. This diamond could be worth $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. I said, "I have no idea, but it's worth a lot." I said, where are you staying tonight?" He said, "I'm camped up the lake." I said, don't be showing everybody this diamond. It wouldn't be a good idea." I said, "You just kind of hang on to it, and y'all keep this to yourself until tomorrow." And I said, "You will be here in the morning, won't you?" Because I knew those media people were going to come in by the droves, and they did. And I said, he said, yeah, if you need me to. I said, oh, I need you to. There's a lot of questions to be answered, and I need you here really bad. So he said, well, okay. So he went to the lake to camp. He got to thinking about what I'd said and got pretty nervous about it later on that night. And he loaded his family up, and he went to Arkadelphia and got a hotel room in Arkadelphia. He got kind of scared, really. So the next morning come, and before I got out of bed, an hour before daylight, the first phone call came in. And, well, I need to back up. I think, as best I can recall, I called Tyler Hardiman that night, who was on the tourism, the tourism part of the department. And Tyler was kind of the go-to guy. If you found a diamond, you let Tyler know. He let the newspapers, the media know. He called UPI, Associated Press, and then it all started. Well, I called Tyler. I'm pretty sure I called him. The next morning, the first phone call was from London. And as soon as I got that call, I thought, this is fixing to really get out of hand. And it did. By 9 or 10 o'clock, there was more TV vehicles out there with antennas and newspaper reporters. You couldn't stir them with a stick. And I'm standing there, really not knowing what was going on. I only been at this park for 2 years, about 25 years old. Still couldn't spell superintendent, but I still was one. And anyway, I was thinking, where's Mr. Johnson? I need him. And they were all asking me, where's Mr. Johnson? We want to interview him. Well, he finally called a little while later, and he said, I got scared and went to Arkadelphia. And he said, I'm kind of scared to come over there. Well, I did have a pretty quick thought. I said, I know a guy that's the deputy. If I send him over there to be your guard and bring you back, would you come? Yeah, I'll do that. So he came back, and boy, that took a load off of me because I was really kind of under the gun. And he stayed there all day and did a million interviews, I think. Nicest guy, Mr. Johnson and I became very good friends. Nicest guy you've ever met, just a good, honest, logical country guy with a country family that you just couldn't help but like. So he stayed there and did all that, and the publicity went out, and within 2 weeks, we had more people in after Labor Day than we did on the 4th of July. Our visitation probably quadrupled, if not more than that, in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. We had lost a bunch of our help back to college because a lot of them were college kids. So we were taking care of 5 times as many tourists with about half the staff, which was short to start with. It nearly worked us to death that fall, but, poor me. But we got through it. Along about December, TV show from New York City called The Gary Moore Show, and they wanted Mr. Johnson to be on The Gary Moore Show as the man who had found the largest diamond in North America. Well, I gave him his phone number. I gave them his phone number. They called him. He didn't want to go. He was a very humble man. He said, I don't want to go, but he said, I'll give the diamond to Cannon to bring up here and let him go. So he called me and said, would you do this? And I said, well, I'd have to check with, I believe it was Richard I checked with then. I think Richard was the director by then. But if it wasn't Richard, it was somebody else, but I think it was Richard. I called and told him what the deal was, and they said, sure, go. It'll be great publicity. I said, well, what if I win a prize? They said, oh, you can't keep that. You got to give that over. You got to give that to charity. I said, okay. So my wife and I went up there. I took the diamond in a little box. I put it in my pocket, got on an airplane, went to New York City, got off the airplane, and a couple of security guards from like Brinkman or somebody met me there, armed, big burly guys. They took the diamond, took it and locked it up. We was there a day or two. I went on the show. It was pretty fun. I enjoyed that. They filmed all those shows in one day. We had good company, and within the same room before my part, I was in good company with the world champion hog caller, and this was a lady, and a man who had parachuted out of an airplane, and the chute didn't open, and he lived through it. I remember those two, and the lady that was the world champion hog caller was quite proud of her hog calling ability, and it was very good. It honestly was. And she gave us a pretty good demonstration of it, and that was pretty fun too. But anyway, we got on the show, and Kitty Carlisle and Bill something, and I think Gary Moore was the host. So they went through this deal, and they asked us questions to try to figure out who was the real manager, is the way they put it, of the largest diamond mine, of the only diamond mine in North America, the only diamond mine. Well, I was young. They had a couple of other guys older than me. One of them was from Amarillo, tanned, 55, 60 years old. looked like he should have been here, and I looked like I should have been selling candy somewhere probably. But anyway, they all guessed him, and I finally stood up as the only one. And I think I won $250, and I gave it to some charity. I don't really remember what it was. We came back, and that was even more publicity, and that's when the good years really started here. That's when we started making money. But that's what happened with the Amarillo Starlight. That's the way it was found, and that's how it all progressed. Now, I talked to Mr. Johnson a number of times in later years. He told me that up to the time that I lost contact, they hadn't sold the diamond. He said we lease it out to a lot of grand openings of malls, jewelry stores, things like that. So they found a way to get a revenue off the diamond without having to sell it. And I guess he did okay with it. He never did tell me. But I lost touch in a few years, and I would imagine Mr. Johnson has passed by now. I don't know that for sure, but I feel sure he has. And I don't know what his children or what his wife did with it after he passed, but I kind of think it was sold, but I don't know the dollar amount. But that was the biggest diamond. Okay, I'm going to tell you a few more